Hollywood has always sold us a dream. Glamour, fame, red carpets, and larger-than-life stars. But behind the curtain, it is a business, a machine that chews people up and spits them out when they become too much to handle. Some stars weren't just controversial, they were explosive. Their words, their actions, their scandals made them radioactive. And Hollywood has a way of dealing with people like that. Silence them, blacklist them, erase them. Today, we're diving into the stories of 10 stars who were too controversial for Hollywood. 1. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando wasn't just an actor, he was the actor. The man who changed the craft forever, who made The Godfather a masterpiece, who turned method acting into a revolution. But Brando hated playing Hollywood's game. He called out the industry for racism, exploitation, and corruption long before it was fashionable. The most famous moment? The 1973 Oscars. Brando won Best Actor for The Godfather, but instead of showing up, he sent Sachin Littlefeather, a Native American activist, to refuse the award. She stood in front of millions of viewers and told the truth. Hollywood had mistreated and stereotyped indigenous people for decades. The backlash was instant. Littlefeather was booed, mocked, and blacklisted. Brando became a pariah in Hollywood. Studios called him impossible to work with, directors avoided him, and his career went into decline. Brando had the talent to rule Hollywood forever, but he cared more about truth than trophies. 2. Jane Fonda. In the 1960s, she was America's sweetheart, the daughter of screen legend Henry Fonda, the face of hit films, the embodiment of charm and beauty. Then came Vietnam. Fonda became one of the loudest anti-war voices in America. She marched, she protested, and then, in 1972, she traveled to North Vietnam. A photo of her smiling while seated on a North Vietnamese anti-aircraft gun, the same weapons used against US planes, exploded in the press. She was branded Hanoi Jane. For some Americans, she wasn't just controversial, she was a traitor. Veterans groups boycotted her films, politicians attacked her, and Hollywood became terrified of her presence. Yet Jane didn't back down. She kept acting, winning Oscars for Clute and Coming Home. But for decades, the shadow of that photo followed her everywhere. Even today, some people haven't forgiven her. And maybe that's exactly why her name is still unforgettable. 3. Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper was the definition of Hollywood's wild child. He started as a promising young actor under the mentorship of James Dean. By the late 1960s, he directed and starred in Easy Rider, a groundbreaking film that defined the counterculture era. But Hopper had demons, big ones. He became infamous for marathon drug binges, disappearing for days, and showing up on set so intoxicated that directors couldn't control him. On the set of Apocalypse Now, his drug use was so heavy that Francis Ford Coppola had to shoot around him. Studios labeled him unstable. Producers whispered that hiring Hopper was career suicide. For years, he drifted in and out of Hollywood, blacklisted by the very industry he helped reinvent. And yet, despite it all, he staged comebacks, sometimes brilliant, sometimes messy. Hopper lived on the edge, and he refused to step back from it. That edge is what made him iconic, and what made Hollywood fear him. 4. Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor wasn't just a comedian, he was a revolution in human form. On stage, Pryor ripped away the polite mask of comedy. He talked about racism, poverty, drugs, sex, and violence with a brutal honesty that left audiences gasping. He made people laugh, but also forced them to confront ugly truths. Television executives didn't know what to do with him. His language was too raw, his subjects too controversial. Networks tried to censor him, but Pryor wouldn't stop. Off-stage, his life was just as explosive. Drug addiction consumed him. His temper ruined relationships and careers. And then came the infamous 1980 incident. Pryor set himself on fire while freebasing cocaine. He nearly died. After that, studios were terrified of working with him. He was unpredictable, unstable, but still brilliant. Pryor is remembered as one of the greatest comedians of all time. But to Hollywood, he was always a risk too big to fully embrace. 5. Mickey Rourke. In the 1980s, Mickey Rourke was the rising star. He had the looks, the charm, the talent. Critics compared him to Brando. Fans adored him. But Mickey Rourke despised Hollywood. He thought the system was fake, shallow, and corrupt. He openly fought with directors, trashed his own films, and refused to play by the rules. Then, at the height of his fame, he walked away. He became a professional boxer, destroying his face and body in the ring. By the time he tried to come back, his reputation was shot. Studios didn't trust him, directors didn't want him, and audiences barely recognized him. Yes, he eventually made a comeback with The Wrestler, but Rourke's story is a cautionary tale. 6. Vanessa Redgrave. Vanessa Redgrave is a legend of stage and screen, but her Oscar acceptance speech in 1978 is still one of the most controversial moments in Academy history. When she won Best Supporting Actress for Julia, she didn't just thank her director. She used her speech to blast the people protesting her, calling them Zionist hoodlums. The room erupted. Some cheered, some booed, but Hollywood as a whole froze. Redgrave had crossed a line most stars never dared approach. For years afterward, she was considered untouchable. Studios quietly avoided her. Powerful producers labeled her too political, too radical, too dangerous. And yet, Redgrave never backed down. She kept speaking out, kept acting, and kept pushing boundaries. Hollywood tried to silence her, but she remained unstoppable. 7. Robert Downey Jr. It's hard to imagine now, but before Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. was Hollywood's biggest cautionary tale. In the 1990s, Downey was everywhere. Critics loved him, audiences loved him. But behind the scenes, his life was spiraling out of control. Drugs, arrests, probation violations, even time in prison. He became so unreliable that studios fired him mid-production. By the early 2000s, Downey was done. Blacklisted, too controversial, too risky. And then came the comeback. Clean, focused, and disciplined, he landed the role of Tony Stark in Iron Man. The film not only saved his career, it built the entire Marvel empire. Downey went from being Hollywood's problem child to its golden boy. But make no mistake, for years he was considered a star no one could touch. 8. Sinead O'Connor. Saturday Night Live. Sinead O'Connor is performing live. She sings a haunting rendition of Bob Marley's War. And then, in a shocking moment, she holds up a photo of Pope John Paul II and rips it in half. "Fight the real enemy," she says. The silence was deafening. The backlash was immediate. She was booed, banned from NBC, blacklisted by radio stations, and mocked by celebrities. But here's the twist. Sinead was right. Decades later, the Catholic Church scandals would become headline news. But in 1992, she was punished for daring to speak the truth. Hollywood didn't just reject her, it erased her. And yet, today, she's remembered as one of the bravest voices of her generation. 9. Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen's fall from grace wasn't quiet. It was a train wreck broadcast live. In the early 2000s, Sheen was the highest paid TV actor in the world thanks to 2.5 Men. But behind the scenes, his life was spiraling. Drugs, sex scandals, arrests. It all came crashing down in 2011 when he went on a public meltdown. His bizarre interviews turned him into a meme before memes even ruled the internet. Warner Brothers fired him. Studios blacklisted him. Even his co-stars wanted nothing to do with him. For a brief moment, Sheen was the most talked about man in America. But Hollywood doesn't forgive chaos, and Sheen had burned every bridge. 10. Mel Gibson. For years, Gibson was untouchable. Mad Max, Lethal Weapon, Braveheart. He was a superstar actor, a respected director, even an Oscar winner. Then came the scandals. Drunk driving arrests, racist and anti-Semitic rants caught on tape, abusive relationships. Hollywood couldn't ignore it anymore. Overnight, Gibson went from A-list to outcast. Studios pulled projects, actors refused to work with him, and his name became toxic. Yes, he's made a slow return in recent years, but the damage was done. Gibson became the ultimate example of how fast Hollywood can turn on even its brightest stars. So what do we learn from all of this? That Hollywood isn't just about talent. It's about image, control, and silence. If you step too far out of line, if you speak too loudly, rebel too fiercely, or crash too publicly, the machine spits you out. Hollywood loves its stars until it doesn't.